sometimes you don't know what you're singing.
Come by here, I think there's a translation in the song.
Okay. Well, sometimes some people are a little bit more.
That's why.
For the Los Angeles Development of Water and Power, working with the Department of Neighbor Empowerment to neighbor councils and LAUSD on water conservation.
Oh, I understand we're waiting for DWP staff?
Okay.
Oh, for Ms. Han, okay. Then let's move to number 2.
Item number two is the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment report relative to the Neighborhood Council inventory process and equipment purchases.
Okay. How are we doing on that?
Good morning. Claudia Dunn, Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, Assistant General Manager. Just here to give you a status report. We were, as you recall, back on March 3rd, your committee asked us to follow through, correspond with the neighborhood councils on getting information on their inventory, their purchases, where the items are located, and to also tag them. We sent out a letter in March. We gave them a deadline of April 30th. The department extended the deadline to May 8th at the request of many of the neighborhood councils. Their treasurers are CPAs, and they were consumed with end-of-year, fiscal year matters, and asked that we give them more time. So we provided you a letter, your committee a letter back on May 8th with the status report indicating that 10 neighborhood councils at that point have responded, which is 11.2%. We then followed up with several e-blasts to our neighborhood councils, reminding them of the importance of getting this back to us. Mm-hmm. And as of July 7th, July 7th, 25 responses are in, which is a 28% response rate. We have gone to the level of additional e-blast reminders. We've had our field staff go out and personally hand carry packets to neighborhood council treasurers. We've taken every diligent effort to get the information out there. It's just not coming back. What we do have back, though, has been very fruitful. We've got a list of just about every item that neighborhood councils can identify. Of the 25. If you'd like, we can give a comprehensive written report on what we have, but we still have a bulk of the neighborhood councils who haven't responded at this time.
So what is the plan to get them to respond?
Well, maybe the city attorney can weigh in here, but there are options. We do have the option of freezing funding until responses are.
Why don't you do that?
We can. We'll take the next steps. I mean, we've done everything we can in terms of.
I think you should have done that at the beginning and set a time frame on it. And they don't do it. They don't get any checks. I mean, it's a simple thing.
Mm-hmm. We will.
So how much longer do we have to wait?
I would say if you give us another 30 days with that, providing that information to them, because we did emphasize in our correspondence to them that this was at the direction of this committee.
Okay. Then I think you should do that.
Okay.
We'll continue this matter for another 30 days. On the ones that are submitting, you said it's been very fruitful.
Yes. They've provided us with lists of just about everything that they've, it documents that all the way down to tape recorders, which is something that isn't required by the controller's inventory policy. Mm-hmm. But it's really interesting that they've been able to identify where the items are, and it's down to the level of even digital cameras, as Councilmember Zine was using as an example. Uh-huh. So, and identifying where it is, and then they have inventory tags and they ticket the items.
Right. So that's for the 25. I would assume the longer they take, the worse their records are going to be. Mm-hmm. So. Have we resolved this matter? I thought that the controller's instructions were interpreted differently. You said that the controller's instructions only required tracking to $1,000 or something.
Correct. The threshold.
And I don't believe that's
The threshold was
necessarily the interpretation.
$1,000, but we on our own decide, we were using the controller's threshold
So
to
I don't,
begin
I'm
with.
not, I'm not interested in the controller's instructions. I'm interested in what most departments do. And most departments track in far greater detail than $1,000.
I suppose the controller would have to validate what the departments do, but I know that that's the
No,
requirement that
this committee, forget about the controller. If their standard's 1,000, I'm telling you, that's not acceptable to this committee. And I think if you went to the police department and said, how many digital cameras have you sold, they can tell you. Or how many have you purchased, they could tell you, and they could probably tell you where they are. So I think every department should be held to the same standard. I don't know why it's $1,000. In fact, why don't we send a letter from the chair of this committee to the controller asking her to tighten those standards? Because $1,000 is ridiculous. And in the letter, we should explain the kinds of items that could be purchased that would be lost to the city if we didn't track them, and see if they can't tighten the screws on that $1,000 standard. It's ridiculous. But this department has said that they were going to track to what level?
Pretty much, excuse me, pretty much anything that is, we took it down to $100,
Yeah.
basically. So it's just about anything that falls into the area of equipment or
And that's the way it
purchase.
should be. I mean, you
Yeah.
shouldn't lose track of this stuff. I mean, but particularly when you're outstationed with 90 different outstations, if you don't have a tight inventory control system, you're going to lose a lot of stuff. And that's what we're hearing. What we're hearing is that a lot of neighborhood councils are accusing other council members, whether it's true or not, it's causing disruption. And the purpose of the department is to help facilitate these organizations, not create more disruption or animosity or enmity. I mean, but that's what happens.
Right.
When one president thinks the previous president took a desk or, something, it just creates, it's just not good for the health of the system. So I take this very seriously. And so we'll get that back in 30 days. And you know what? I would like a written report
Sure,
on-
we'll provide that.
on the current, whatever you have by then, I want a full
An
report.
analysis and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, thank you. By the way, are there neighborhood councils in the 7th Council District that have not submitted a report?
I can tell you, let's see. Sylmar is one of yours, correct? Yes,
Mhm.
they have. Who else?
Pacoima, Mission
Pacoima.
Hills,
Pacoima
Panorama City.
has not. Panorama City has not. We sent everything out by certified mail, so their green cards came back that they received the packet, but we do not have a,
Okay, well,
Response
I'll
back.
reach out to all the presidents and make sure they get
Yeah.
that done.
okay,
Okay, then we'll wait for 30 days.
thank you.
We have no cards on this item, so we'll just move to item number 3.
Item number 3 is the city attorney report in response to recommendation numbers 31 and 36 of the Neighborhood Council Review Commission's final report regarding the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners.
Okay.
Good morning, council member, Deputy City Attorney Darren Martinez.
Hey, Darren.
And Linda Lux, President of the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners.
Hi, Linda. So what are we doing here?
Well, by way of a brief background, what we have outstanding is a couple of recommendations from the Neighborhood Council Review Commission, and we're dealing with recommendations number 31 and 36. Recommendation number 31 is that the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners would be subject to any rules it adopts for neighborhood councils. And recommendation number 36 was that the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners would meet annually with City Council to provide a self-assessment or self-evaluation of its activities. Our report basically goes over the background of these recommendations and how they were created. And we recommend that there be no further action unless the committee decides that they'd like to recommend that we actually create a formal ordinance. Since these recommendations are largely an expression of the goals of the neighborhood council system, we believe that City Council has adopted this as an appropriate policy for the system, and our recommendation is basically that the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, when it does decide if it adopts any policies, it could simply state in its policies how, if that policy is applicable to the board, how it should apply. If, however, the committee would like these recommendations more formally implemented by way of an ordinance, that is something that it lies within your discretion to have that created.
Okay. The Neighborhood Council Review Commission was a subset of BONC? Or what
No,
was
if
the
you
relationship
if you
between BONC
recall,
and the Neighborhood Council Review Commission?
no, if you recall, the Neighborhood Council Review Commission was established by the city charter, and it required that the Neighborhood Council Review Commission be appointed. I believe it was 7 years after the establishment of neighborhood councils. And what they did is they kind of took a broad look at the issues or problems that were facing the system. And
But BONC was part
Well,
and parcel of the Neighborhood Council.
no, BONC is the Citizen Advisory Commission that oversees neighborhood councils.
How many members of BONC were on the Neighborhood Review Commission?
None.
None?
None.
Okay.
Well, Esther Cepeda, I think, had been. She had been before she was appointed to the board.
Okay. Okay, but the Neighborhood
Right.
Council Review Commission recommended these things. Has BONC acted on them?
Yes, I think we look at everything within the framework of the recommendations of the Neighborhood Council Review Commission.
Okay.
And I think we do
Very
stu-
simply, does
Yeah.
BONC have a policy that any rules that it adopts for neighborhood councils are adopted by BONC?
Yes, we actually look at ourselves as setting the example. So we do look at everything.
So you have that
we-
policy in place?
We do, actually, we do, as just a matter of course. I think we just act on that. I don't know that we've actually adopted that as a policy.
That would be something that I'm sure the board could take up in the form of a formal resolution.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful so that we can state that we're in compliance with recommendation 31.
That's fine, but just know that we do keep that into consideration, and we do act the way we would prefer the neighborhood councils to act. We lead by example. So we are doing it, but if you like, we can certainly look at adopting a resolution.
I think it would set a good example to establish a formal resolution,
Absolutely, okay, fine,
to use your own words,
okay.
okay? Recommendation 36 requires BONC to meet annually with city council and neighborhood council representatives to provide a self-evaluation of its activities. Do we have a mechanism for a self-evaluation for BONC?
We have been doing it. We have a draft of this year's. It has to be approved at the July 20th meeting, but we have done it for the last 2 years as a matter of course. So we are doing that,
Doing what?
doing an annual
Well, the
self-evaluation.
self-evaluation.
But you haven't met with.
Are you
No, we
meeting-
haven't. We're happy to anytime you'd like to meet with us. We have met with ENN in the past when Councilmember Hahn was the chair, and we're happy to come back to this committee at any time that we're invited or to the full council.
What about-
Okay, but again,
Right.
this is saying that BONC should meet annually with city council and neighborhood council, regardless of what the committee wants, the council wants. The Neighborhood Council Review Commission recommended that BONC should meet to provide that self-evaluation.
As I said, we're happy to do that. We provide you the self-evaluation in writing. If you'd like us to do it in person as well, we're happy to.
The recommendation, I want to be very clear here.
Yes.
Linda, the recommendation is to meet, not just do the self-evaluation, but to meet annually with representatives of the neighborhood council and the city council.
We're happy to do that. How would you like to?
I know you're happy to do it, but have you done it?
We have not asked to meet with you, but you haven't asked to meet with us either. So we're happy to,
But it doesn't require us to ask you.
you want us to ask you.
I want you to comply with recommendation 36.
Fine, we'll formally ask the council to meet with us.
How do you think you would do the second part of that, which is, it's basically BONC shall meet annually with representatives of neighborhood councils?
With representatives of neighborhood
Uh-huh.
councils?
Is what recommendation 36 says. How do you think?
We do that. We have hearings all through the year. We've had quite a number
On
of hearings.
self-evaluation.
It's
No,
basically
not
on this self-evaluation.
No, we haven't met with the neighborhood councils on the self-evaluation.
Well, let me just add one point. When the board does agendize their self-evaluation report for adoption by the committee,
Right.
there would be that opportunity for public comment and
I don't think
perhaps.
that's the spirit of these recommendations. The spirit, it sounds like, it's more of a
Sit down and meet with them.
proactive on the part of Bonk to meet with city council and representatives of neighborhood councils on this self-evaluation. So it sounds more like, and that's why I was asking, how do you see that actually practically happening? Because I clearly think that the spirit was not just that you do it and neighborhood councils and city council make themselves available to you. It sounds like the spirit was more the other way, that they wanted Bonk to actually reach out. But I'm trying to
Can I ask something? Daryl,
figure out how that would work.
didn't we pass this thing? Did the council, didn't the
Yeah.
council already voted to
The
approve
the
it?
council has already voted to approve both these recommendations.
So
in-
why are
in
we
co-
sitting
in- no,
here
in-
dilly-dallying
in-
around?
In concept, but then the city council also directed the city attorney to report back on
As to how we're going to do it?
one of the recommendations, to review them, to see, how we might go about implementing them.
Right.
Because we have not implemented these.
So
Right.
it's not a question of whether we should or shouldn't.
But let me just
We already
clarify.
agreed to do it.
Gwen Poindexter, the city council did approve both of these recommendations.
Yeah.
I don't believe in concept, but approve them.
Right.
They asked the city attorney to report back to evaluate whether or not we needed to codify either one of these recommendations in the form of either a plan, excuse me, or an ordinance. Our report indicates that we don't legally need to
We
do
don't
so.
need to do that, but
it's
we
up
still
to-
need to do it.
Well, it's up to the city council how they would like to have it
Okay, so
implemented.
You're right.
Where the city attorney erred in your description was, you assume that if we don't have an ordinance, it's if or,
Well-
it's iffy about whether we need to do it.
No,
There's
no,
no
no,
question
no.
about that.
That's
We need
not
to
what
do
I-
it, and Bonk has not done it.
Well-
That's the bottom line.
Councilmember, I want to just, I have to clarify, that's not what our report indicated.
Uh-huh.
It simply said that to execute, to implement
I
the
agree. I don't
provisions,
think
you
we
don't
need-
need an ordinance because they're self-executing. City council adopted the provisions. Bonk can now on its own automatically implement them. Now, if you want to have an ordinance that regulates and mandates this, that's up to the city council, and we're happy to
Well, the
craft
bottom
that
line
ordinance.
is this. The council does not want any of these recommendations that have been made to be perceived as something we don't want to implement. We already approved these two items. The question is whether or not, to me, the question is whether or not Bonk has implemented those. It's not just a question of whether we have to do an ordinance or not.
Right.
It's a question of how is Bonk implementing those. And so I have not heard anything that tells me that you've implemented either 31 or 36.
Right, which is why I was asking, how do you see, because they haven't yet so far. So I was trying to see whether or not we want to create a more strict plan was why I was asking, how do you practically see that working?
Well, I see it as an agreement among us. I don't know that you want to codify it, it's up to you, but in the letters that we send with our self-evaluation, there's always an introduction that asks to meet with you. We've not had a response. If there's another mechanism that you would like to
In a letter for
implement to
what?
make that happen.
A letter for what?
We send an annual letter to the council saying our self-evaluating what we've done, what we've accomplished in the last year, very specific letters. And then in the preface of the letter asked to meet with the council. So if there's another step you want us to take in that regard, we're happy to do it. And secondarily, during our town hall meetings, which we have quite a number during the year, we ask for input from all the neighborhood councils quite a number of times during the year. We get lots of feedback. And
Linda,
a
I
lot
need
of
to
our
correct you.
policies
The
are a
letter that
result
you're
of-
referring to, are you talking about May 7th,
Yes.
2008?
Yeah,
That letter went to the mayor.
and to the city council.
No, it did not. It was CC'd. Or we have a copy of it, it wasn't
Yeah.
even CC'd.
Um,
You want to take a look
It's
at
supposed to
it?
go to the city council. No, I have it in my
Well,
packet.
no, it just says
No,
Mayor
it's meant to
Villaraigosa.
go to the city council.
I never read letters that go to him,
Ah, okay, so there needs to be another specific request then.
just on principle.
Well, these items are specific to the city council.
Right.
They don't
Then the
say
letter
anything
that
about
we
the
are-
mayor, quite frankly.
We
Right.
have a letter that's going, we have a meeting on the 20th of July, and we'll hopefully approve the letter. In the beginning of the letter, we will ask specifically for a meeting with you. It will go to the city council. And we hope.
Yeah,
that you will
because,
take
I
us
mean,
up
in your
on that.
first letter, it says Bonk is happy to provide written and/or in-person testimony
Yes.
at the invitation of the city council
Yeah.
on an annual self-evaluation. But this letter went to the mayor.
Um,
We're not the mayor. I mean, I
no,
take offense
it
to
was
that.
not on purpose. It was not purposely done. And it shall go, in this year's letter will go to you directly, Ann. Okay.
And maybe what, obviously, I mean, it would start out, I think, going to this committee. And I think what needs to happen is an annual agendizing. I think that's what needs to happen, an annual agendizing in this committee, whoever is on this committee in the future, to hear the annual report and self-evaluation from Bonk. I
that's
think that
clearly
would
the
help. I
spirit.
think that would help.
Well, that's
That'd be
clearly
great.
the spirit of the.
Instead of waiting, I think that just needs to take, maybe we do it July, the first meeting in July, or the end of the year, I mean, however, but I think we need to take that,
It can be whenever, it's just
Yeah.
annually.
I think we should have an annual agendizing of that. And I don't know how that
And now,
works.
how have,
City clerk can help with that.
Yeah,
City clerk can help with that.
Yeah.
so,
every July, I think we should have a report.
with regard to recommendation 36, with regard to meeting with neighborhood councils to offer the same,
Yeah.
how is that being done?
Well, as I said, it's been done throughout the year. We have a series of town hall meetings where we get input from all the neighborhood councils on specific areas. We have not had a specific town hall for self-evaluation, which we certainly can do at your direction, and we're happy to do.
You know, Linda, you keep talking about things that are not pertinent to the item before us. The only thing we're talking about is self-evaluation.
Okay.
The only thing we're talking about is meeting with the neighborhood councils regarding a report. Let me read it again. The Bonk shall meet annually with the city council and representatives of neighborhood councils to offer a report and self-evaluation of its activities for the previous year. So my question is very specific. Has that been done?
It has been done the last 2 years, and the draft of this year's is in my hands. It's not been approved by the board, and it will be done very shortly.
Okay, so this report is specific to the self-evaluation.
Specific to the self-evaluation.
But have you met with representatives of neighborhood councils to offer that report?
We will, at our July 20th meeting, will be made public, yes.
Yeah, I still don't think that's the spirit either.
I don't think that's the spirit.
Okay.
I mean,
And that's what I'm trying to figure
I
out.
mean, we would have to have the commissioners to tell us what the spirit was, but it seemed to me that they wanted you to sit down and have a conversation about that stuff, as opposed to having a meeting from on high, talking down to the board members, asking them that they can make a public comment if they want, or they can, that's not
Yeah.
that's not what
That's
this,
not- yeah,
that's
but
not the
I'm-
spirit.
I don't
When
know
I
how that
read
would
this,
work.
that's not what it says to me.
Well, just for.
Otherwise, they would have just said, Bonk shall meet annually with,
No, it's,
at its annual board meeting, will
we'll present the
present
report.
the report.
Right.
But that's not what it says. What it says, it will meet with representatives of neighborhood councils, and I'm not
Right.
getting the sense that that's
When
happening.
you see the report, I just have to say, it shows accumulated information from the past year of the numerous meetings we have with neighborhood council meetings with neighborhood councils on every subject of the policy calendar that we develop. It's in communication with the neighborhood councils, with the department. It's
You know,
a
Linda,
collaborative effort.
I gotta believe that you're doing this, but you just
We are
you're not tracking it right. You know, you're just not documenting when you're doing it right. You specifically have to make an effort to do just this. So when you're meeting with the neighborhood councils, it needs to say, we're meeting with, 5 presidents or 20 presidents or whatever, specifically to talk about the report, general report on activities and self-evaluation.
Okay.
And maybe this works at the annual
Maybe you're doing it, but
conference.
I'm not getting the sense that.
Maybe you do it at the
I just
annual
want to clear this item. I just want to get these recommendations. I don't want some neighborhood council member saying, oh, you guys voted for that stuff, but you really didn't implement it. Because they've never actually met, and they're going to say, what meeting did you talk, which meeting was, and then it would have to be on the agenda, clearly laid out. It probably isn't. and all that stuff, when all you have to do is just follow this recommendation. It's very simple.
I actually think the board should adopt a resolution to make it a part of the annual neighborhood council conference, convention, whatever,
Congress meeting.
the Congress.
Well, that's one way you can put it.
I think that if I were the bonk, I would say that would be a breakout session. That's where you could really sit down. I mean, bonk would be, kind of hosting that breakout session, and you would be meeting with representatives of neighborhood council to offer your annual self-evaluation and report of your activities. If I were you, that's one of the ways you could implement 36. I think that would, I'm trying to figure out how it would work, because you're obviously not going to go out to 88 neighborhood councils.
That's a great opportunity. I mean, you could just,
I think the Congress would be, again, you host.
anybody who's interested could
You
come.
host the breakout session. You'd be hosting it, you'd be sitting down, and you'd be saying, here's what we did this year.
I think we can add that to the breakout sessions that we do have, which are usually based on policy that we're considering or asking for feedback on policy.
I think
but
you
we
need to
can
do your,
certainly add
I think to comply with this, you need to present your annual self-evaluation with representatives of neighbors, sitting down face to face and say, here's how we evaluated ourselves this year. What do you think?
Okay.
That's what I would do to satisfy 36.
Okay.
Unless you wanted to have a separate thing, and
Well,
that's,
there's also
you could
the
do that
regional
too.
congresses, which would be more.
The regional
personal.
congress might be
Either way, but I
acceptable,
think
but
you need
either
to.
way, it has to be a specific.
I think
I
you need to
understand.
adopt that as a policy, just like I think this committee should adopt an annual agendizing of this report, so you can satisfy that.
Well, I mean,
that
that's subject to the chair, and, I could say that, but it's up to the chair to put it on the agenda. It's fine with me. But,
I can figure out how to do this.
so that's, yeah, I agree, we don't have to do an ordinance for something like this, but, I'll tell you what, why don't we reschedule this in 60 days? We're rescheduling, not the discussion about whether we need an ordinance or not. We're rescheduling the implementation of 31 and 36.
Okay,
Okay?
great.
Great.
Excuse me, may I suggest additional 30 days? We have August, we're taking a break, so we have a policy where we don't adopt policies except over a period of time, and if we're not meeting in August, our board is not meeting in August, we might need a little bit more time.
Do you want
perhaps
90 days?
That would guarantee we'd have it
Fine.
done.
We're taking a break too in August.
Okay. Okay?
Absolutely. We'll have a new council member by then, too. Probably serve on this committee.
And for clarification, do you want to hold the city attorney report until that time, until the complete discussion, or do you want to move that item forward?
Oh,
Hold it.
we should send that item forward. Nah, we could just hold it, doesn't matter. But you don't have to come back on that. I mean, we'll just keep it in the file and then send it all together.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, going back to item number 1.
Item number 1 is a motion of Han Alacon relative
No.
to development of an outreach plan for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, working with working with the neighborhood councils and LASD on water conservation.
Good morning, Wendy Yancey, Manager of Government and Neighborhood Relations for the Department of Water and Power.
And Claudia Dunn, Assistant General Manager, Neighborhood Empowerment.
Since our last meeting, the Department of Water and Power, Director of Public Affairs, and myself met with the General Manager of Dunn, and we discussed how we could better partner and strategically plan for outreach as we move forward with neighborhood councils. We discussed at length what we're doing now, and the General Manager thought that was a good idea. And what we're doing now, as I mentioned last time I was here, was trying to go out to each neighborhood council and develop relationships and share information. In addition, we did compare some other things that we're doing. As I mentioned before, we do have the email blast, and it is a good thing that we're using the Dunn contact. We start with that as a basis, as their list that they post online, et cetera. And by us going out to each individual neighborhood councils, we're also augmenting that list, adding to it, to really get to the folks who are really interested in the issues and who will bring it back to the individual neighborhood councils. Lastly, we also mentioned that we talked about our MOU with the neighborhood councils, which requires the LADWP to provide educational workshops. The general manager meets with the general manager of DWP meets with the oversight committee on a semi-regular basis. We're trying to target every 4 to 6 weeks, and it was agreed upon that we would actually take the third Saturday of the month to provide educational workshops. Thus far, June 20th, we had conservation in South LA, water conservation and energy efficiency in South LA. This Saturday, we're having water conservation, electric rate restructuring, as well as our strategic plan. And then August, we have power reliability. So we have a plan going forward as far as the monthly outreach. And then again, we're still continuing with the visiting each neighborhood council throughout the quarter. Our goal is to actually touch and speak with each neighborhood council at least once a quarter, if not called upon to speak more. So summarily going forward, it was a little bit of a, I know this should have been done prior to. That's what the motion actually requested, and I do recognize that and apologize. But going forward, we've decided that we're going to actually meet on a monthly basis with Claudia also, but with the GM of Dunn to basically make sure that we're all on the same page, so that when we have topics, we know what they are, we know what's coming down the pipe, if you will. So as we do our email blast, they will also include information in their email blast, and then they will also, their staff will be apprised of what's going on so that they can help us disseminate information as they go out to the neighborhood councils also.
Okay, I need to
I'm sorry.
clarify something. I don't believe this matter has been approved by the council. Is that the case?
What matter?
This is a motion relative to developing an outreach plan by DWP and Neighborhood Council. Has it been approved by council?
No, the motion is introduced to council, and then it was referred to this committee and the Energy and Environment Committee.
So before we can demand a plan, we need to get the council to approve the motion. Council has never considered this motion in its entirety. It was
Right.
referred to
It's
committee.
here, it always comes to
Right.
committee.
So it sounds to me like you're moving forward with the development of a plan, but we need to send this matter to council for approval.
If the committee's recommendation is to approve the motion, yes, it can be scheduled then next for
Right.
council.
So what I'd like to do is, it has to go to Energy and Environment Committee as well. So our first action should be to approve the motion and recommend approval of the motion, and then we send it to Energy and Environment, and then once it's approved by the council,
Oh,
then
it comes back here?
it comes back here. Yeah.
Okay, seems like a lot of steps.
Doesn't mean that you can't work out a plan.
Right, I think
as
you
this
should
thing
have
is
a
going.
plan.
So-
I think when it comes back,
And
you
that's the
should have
bottom
a plan.
line, but there's nothing that prohibits you from working to develop a plan anyway, which would be our recommendation, but technically, we got to get the council to approve this motion, okay?
Okay.
So it sounds to me like you're in the process of developing a plan.
Right, and-
We don't have a plan in hand. And we would like to see one.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, the motion concentrated on water conservation, and so what we'd like to present perhaps once it comes back, is the general overall plan that we'll use on each issue. So for example, though we'll have an outreach plan, let's say for a specific issue, our strategic plan will be how we will work with Dunn to get that.
Like, for
outreach
instance, watering twice a week. Is that what you mean? That's
Right.
an issue?
Right. Or water recycling. You know, even though it's a
Okay.
little piece and it may not be included in this specific plan that's mentioned in the motion, we
Right.
took this as an opportunity to talk about how we would work going forward.
Okay. Yeah, and if I can just speak, because it was my motion, yeah, and I know you already said it, but this really was from October of 2008, long before we got right into the middle, of this. I really wanted DWP to work with Dunn to figure out how we could, particularly since, this is the one department that does have the MOU, with neighborhood councils on how we can it was really about education. And I know we also asked about the school district, and I know I'm excited to hear you've talked to my office about actually talking about teaching water conservation in the curriculum, which is, I remember when I worked for Western Waste in the late 80s, one of my jobs was to develop a recycling curriculum for the school district, which I did, because we've always believed that if kids know how to do it, they'll teach their parents how to do it, and they become the trash police, and I think they can become, the little water police in their own homes. But I think my concern is, again, I know we're now adding, a couple more steps, but I think, as Richard said, this doesn't preclude you from developing this plan with Dunn on how we educate. I still have many calls to my office on people who do not understand the twice a week watering. They do not understand that they can hand water every day between before 9 and after 4. There's still so much that people don't know. So, I always feel like our neighborhood councils is such a great grassroots network in LA. So how do the two of you work together to really educate the masses out there on what phase we're in and what does that mean for people? So I like the idea that you're going to take each of these issues and figure out, working with Dunn, how you might go about implementing that kind of an education. I'm very interested to hear how you come back on the school district. I think that'll be huge.
I think one of the things that we're going to work closely with DWP on is incorporating in those educational sessions into our regional trainings, as we do those quarterly, as you know. So making sure that those kinds of engagements and roundtables occur, so that the information is out there as well.
And I think we need, at some point, you need to figure out what's effective. Is blast emails effective? I'm still one of those that, is not a big believer in information dumping. I think it happens all the time. People in my own office blast to each other and don't read it. So, is that the most effective way? And I think that's what I wanted to figure out. What's the most effective way to educate the masses? A lot of people still aren't. There's a lot of seniors that aren't on emails.
I think that's an effective tool, council member, but it's going to them.
So I just
motion quite a bit.
Well, no, it's not. It's work on a plan. So I just want to make sure before you do something, you've really found what's most effective. And I think your MOU, your group of stakeholders in the neighborhood councils, is a great resource on what works and wasn't work. I mean, I think Measure B was a great example of, the neighborhood councils really organizing. So what worked? You might want to ask them, what worked for you in that campaign? How did you communicate? How did you rally the troops? This is kind of about, maybe it was, or maybe there were some other things. So I just want to make sure, because I don't feel like Los Angeles is really there yet in terms of totally understanding the crisis we're in or working to conserve.
Yeah. By the way, my record shows that the motion went in on October 7th, 2008.
Right, that's what I just said.
No, you said 2007. You scared me.
No, I said 2008.
Yeah.
I said 8. Sometimes you can't hear.
So when we approve this, when the council approves this, it says to report back to Education and Neighborhood Committee within 90 days. So it has to go back to council for approval, and then it comes to this committee 90 days after that. And it does include to report back on the feasibility of implementing water conservation workshops throughout the various LAUSD schools. Okay, so is that happening? Or are you working on that piece?
Actually, the LAUSD piece is a little more intricate in that the education group at DWP is making it a part of the A to G curriculum, or working towards making it a part of the A to G curriculum, because historically we would offer curriculum to teachers and or schools. They would take it, but we had no real mechanism to determine whether it was actually being taught and what was going on after we just handed them the curriculum. So this way they will have a curriculum. They will be taught how to teach the curriculum, as well as test the young people on it. So we feel that way we'll at least be able to benchmark and know what's happening with the information that's being shared.
Okay, so when the council approves this, this committee should have a report back in 90 days. There's no specificity on the LAUSD piece in terms of a time frame, but I would suggest that 90 days would be appropriate there as well.
That would have been my request, council member. We think that we'll have some information relative to LAUSD around the end of September, beginning of October timeframe, so that would be perfect.
Okay, then I'll accept an amendment from Ms. Hahn to place the 90-day requirement on that part of the motion as well. Okay, we have several.
Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean you have curriculum in 90 days. I mean, really, the motion is just asking for an outreach plan to LA Unified. So it doesn't really say you've got to come back with curriculum at that point. Just basically, how are you going to work with them to suggest this idea of curriculum, and maybe how you could, work with them to develop something in the elementary schools on this issue. So will you have a written report, you think?
I will definitely have a written report.
Yeah, that
for
would
you.
be great. But again, it has to be working together.
And that's what we talked about. We wanted to make sure we were both able to.
A joint report.
It will be.
It will be.
By the way, the motion says strategize a contextual format on outreach. I'm not clear on what that is. What does that mean? What is, I don't understand what contextual format means.
I don't know what that means either. I'm not looking at the motion. Where's the motion?
It's right here.
Jennifer, would you like to come to the microphone or keep talking? I don't know what you're saying. Let's see, Bach probably wrote this.
Sounds like it.
It does. Where's
But I don't know what
contextual?
contextual format means.
And the I therefore move.
Where?
Huh?
And the I therefore move is where it is. That's what she's trying to
Yeah,
look
this
at.
is totally a Bach. Where's the department to strategize a contextual?
A contextual
Some-
format on outreach. I don't know what that means.
The strategy.
Plan.
Well, I think it should just say a strategy.
Right, that's
I don't-
fine.
I don't know what contextual, just delete that
It's the
part.
strategy. I outlined it.
I don't even know what that means.
That's basically, yeah. We wanted to, we wanted a written report. I can't read those notes either.
To work with the department.
I don't know what that means.
Strategize.
What does that mean? Text. We want them to text it. We need a written report. Is that what that means?
I think it should
I
be,
think it means
I think it should be to strategize an outreach program.
I think what we wanted was a written report.
A written report of the strategy.
Right.
Well, they're two separate things. One is, because it then goes on to say to report back. And that could be,
I can't hear you.
so we can make that a written report if you want, but I think what we're talking about is to strategize an outreach program to the neighborhood councils. I don't want you to get confused by that.
No, I don't-
And then
I
also
don't
it
usually
said,
use
well,
words
the reason
like that.
it was more confusing is because in the
Use
second,
words like that.
in the second motion, it says to form a similar educational program, but there's no reference to an educational program in the first motion, so it's very confusing. I believe the educational program, just delete similar, because I don't know what similar refers to, but
Wait, who really reads?
just to form an educational program, right?
Well, I think the similar is the same program that we're doing with neighborhood councils. I think that was the point, to have a similar one in the school district.
We're going to let you guys.
So, yeah, it's an
figure it out. I just
educational
wanted-
program in the neighborhood councils and a similar education program in LASD. That's what it is. It just refers to the program with neighborhood councils.
Okay.
And a
Well, as a
similar-
teacher, I see these as quite different. When you're talking about curriculum for classroom versus outreaching to neighborhood councils, it's totally different things to me. And I think the intent was that you get into the classes, because that's what you say. Subject
Basically,
classes.
it's an educational, we want to educate people. We want to, it's a similar goal. We want to educate the neighborhood councils, and similarly, we want to educate kids.
Okay, we're going to move to public comment. We have Dr. Williams?
This is great.
Yeah. I want to take public comment first. Dr. Williams?
I'll combine it with
Didn't you
agenda items.
submit a card on item number 1?
Yep. Plan, program, that's one thing. Implementation is the real effectiveness of the whole thing. DWP has an MOU. It needs an MOU with its Board of Water and Power Commissioners because they come to the board and the board says, we don't want variances. We don't want these sorts of things. And so even the board versus the department need outreach. The department needs to go to the 15th floor on occasion because they're getting things sent back. Then city council sends things back. City council is also going to be considering this morning more variances to the water conservation plan.
Right.
It seems that let's change things. Outreach. How can the neighborhood councils submit community impact reports if they get 3 hours, 24 hours, 3-day notice? It takes us 60 days to get a motion through, even when everybody agrees to it, because it has to go to committee and then back to the council. So outreach has to be early. It has to be conceptual to some extent so that we can develop something to respond to it. DWP gets frustrated in the same way that we get frustrated by being left to the very last moment and having to do everything in crisis mode. Except that the neighborhood councils don't have special agendas. And it's difficult to get anything through.
They could.
Yeah.
They could. have
So,
special meetings.
DWP has a strategic plan. Hey, DWP board sent it back saying, do a real one. So, thank you. It's just
Thank you,
frustrating.
Doctor. Soledad Garcia?
Hi, Soledad.
How are you? Good morning.
Good morning.
I was taking notes. I'd like to respond to a couple of your suggestions. There is already an educational curriculum in motion. Don't invent, reinvent. Metropolitan has a program for the elementary. I know because I helped initiate it.
Very good.
Two, as far as the group getting together, Dunn and DWP, excellent. But you are missing one link, the important link that passed Measure B, and that's the neighborhood councils.
Right.
The MOU, the oversight committee, should be included as a partner and a member in planning the plan. It's ridiculous to keep omitting us and then giving it back to us. The other is in terms of what we have to offer and what is currently being done is one thing. But the drought is not something that is new to Southern California. It has been in existence for a long time. It should not have just been started. It should be an ongoing, continuous plan and program. It should include, okay. I think basically it's already been said, but the most important thing that I had here was that the neighborhood councils and the community want to conserve. They want to conserve, but they don't know how. The plan must be addressed so that they can understand what is being said. I have been to 4 of their outreach programs, and one of the persons there had never had a contact with them and said, I don't understand what you're saying. They heard. It's not that they didn't understand English. He wasn't even Spanish speaking. But he didn't understand it. And he's not the only one. It's hard to understand something with which you are not familiar. You have to come down to a level that is common to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Cohen?
Good afternoon, council members. Ms. Hahn.
Good afternoon, or good morning.
Good morning.
Really, let's
It was
not
I
push
put
it
on
any
the orange
faster.
line, and then the red line had one of the trains got off the track, or mechanical problems, and it was I don't know, it feels like afternoon, but thank you. And Gwendolyn Poindexter, how are you?
Just fine, thank
We
you.
worked together on the MOU. You know, I have to say it's a sad situation that the City Council actually has to direct the Department of Water and Power to make an outreach program with the neighborhood councils. We've had an MOU for going on 4 years now, we're in the second iteration of it. As was just pointed out, this should be an ongoing process, not just one we have with a major emergency, because we kind of have them all the time, in a sense, in some fashion or another. The DWP could be listing neighborhood councils in their bills to give and directing people to go to their neighborhood councils for more information. What I find is the Department of Water and Power in general is very insular and inward-looking, does not want to do outreach. They virtually have to be dragged kicking and screaming, hence the reason for this. They don't even work with third-party vendors, landscaping associations that have drought programs and equipment and put on shows. They refuse to even deal with them on any kind of basis, or deal with local blogs and local online media, putting out ads, stimulating some interest. I think the DWP has to work very hard with the citizens of Los Angeles, particularly through neighborhood councils, to gain our respect and trust that they really do want citizen participation, not just to give us a mandate, cut back your water or watch your bills go up. Thank you very much.
Okay, the matter is before us, and we need to amend it. I just noticed that nowhere in the first motion is the mention of conservation. I'm assuming that's the purpose.
What are you, which one are you looking at?
Right here.
Yeah, it talks about how to
No,
preserve.
this is not the motion. This is the motion. And nowhere in there does it say water. I'm assuming that's what you want. The report, the strategy.
We must be conscious of the need to change our behavior and attitudes about water and how to preserve by conservation and reuse. I therefore move. So that it is exactly what we're talking about.
I think you should include the words water conservation in the motion.
We must be conscious
Abak will tell you
of the need
what does he tell us all the time? The introductory language means nothing?
No, it doesn't. I therefore move.
I
which
understand that.
It's the sentence right above, I therefore move.
Okay, so I would recommend you amend the motion to say, to strategize an outreach program on water conservation. You also use the word reuse. I'm assuming you want that in there.
Yeah,
Then I would recommend that the motion be amended to say, in the second line, to strategize an outreach program on conservation and reuse, water conservation and reuse to our local neighborhood councils. And then the further move, delete the similar education program, just delete similar, to form an educational program and report back on the feasibility. I want to be clear, the motion says report back on the feasibility. It doesn't say implement. It just says report back on the feasibility. So did you want implementation, or did you want?
well, they can't implement something in LAUSD. I mean, that's a whole different jurisdiction. The idea was, is it feasible for LAUSD? And it looks like Soledad already came back and said, yeah, there's actually curriculum that MWD already has, and that's what it was. Just find out if it's feasible that LAUSD have a similar education program. I like the word similar. Oh my God. Because
This says feasibility of implementing water conservation workshops throughout the various schools. When you say workshops, to me, you're talking community meetings. I don't know unless you're talking about.
I'm gonna let them figure it out.
Um,
I'll let them figure it out. I just want to know whether or not we could include the schools in what we're doing.
Okay. So we're looking for a report back on the feasibility of implementing a program
Yeah.
of workshops with LAUSD.
Maybe when you come back, you bring somebody from the school district. Have them come and tell us what the options are in the school district.
Okay, this is, Soledad, I want to point out, the motion, it is different than what you were saying. I'm not asking, this isn't a conversation. I'm just saying that this is asking for development of workshops that are parallel to the existing subject classes. That's what the motion says. So it's not the same thing. You were saying create a program. The program's already there. This motion seems to know that. And the question is, how do we develop workshops at every school that are from DWP that are parallel to the appropriate subject classes such as science and environment? So it's different. It's a little bit different.
But it's already there. It's a motion.
Not the workshops.
You want a black and white?
This motion is about workshops.
Okay.
The programs, it says subject classes, it knows they're already there. It's just a question of developing workshops with those classes. So, like Janice said, to inform the masses.
I gotta run too.
Okay. Okay, I just want to make that clear. With that,
I have a question, if you don't mind.
we're going to have to go to council, but we're available after. So I'd just like to ask, that be the recommendation to council? And it's actually going to energy and environment, right?
Correct,
Okay,
and then to
thank you.
council.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
duly noted. Oh, excuse me.
That's okay.